Today we'll talk real quickly about Listviews and how you can use the Candidate by Rec list view to really refine your use of Taleo Business Edition. For example, currently I'm looking at my list of candidates by requisition for the specific position of bartender. When I come into the page, you'll see that I actually have two list views that are assigned to my specific user. One of them is called In Process and the other is Available Candidates. The filter for In Process is any of the candidates that are in an in-process status for my requisition, meaning this candidate is being interviewed, and that's in process. Their position within my organization is they're being considered, or I'm in the process of pushing them through my workflow. When I look at the available candidates, the list view filter here is a little bit more specific. It allows me to see any candidates that are in new or available status, which means they cannot have been considered for another position. So if Namu here had been considered for another position to which she had applied, her status would stop being available and therefore stop showing up on this list. Let's just see if that's true. We'll jump into Namu and we can see that she has applied for a great many jobs, but she isn't in process with any of them currently. She's been rejected for one, not selected for another, and there's a few that she is just hasn't started any workflow. So if I went to Corporate Recruiter and I decided to interview her for a phone screen, what's going to happen based on my configuration is her main status is going to get set to in process. When that main status is set to in process, it will no longer satisfy that list view that we had back for that requisition. So if I go back to the list of candidates, you'll see that Namu is no longer here. She's no longer here because her main status no longer meets the requirement of this specific list view. So in effect, because Namu has been considered by the recruiting manager for another position, she's disappeared off this list. Now what happens in the other, as Namu is considered for this other position, there's a likely end. It'll go phone screen, interview, somewhere along the line they'll make a decision, and either they'll hire Namu, in which case she'll never come back to that list and never reappear, or they'll reject Namu for either a hard reject, probably a hard reject, or a not selected, at which point she'll become available again. She'll be put back into the pool of available candidates and therefore should appear. So let's try that. I'm going to reject Namu for the corporate recruiter position for whatever reason. And when I've done that, again, now Namu is no longer in process for any job. Again, she is available for a couple. She's been rejected for a few. So when we go back to our list, she reappears. Effectively, what this is doing is it's locking the candidate out for the recruiter. So as soon as one recruiter starts processing that candidate, the other recruiters no longer have the ability to see the candidate, and therefore they're sort of locked out. As soon as that first recruiter puts the candidate back into a status that's a final status, so either rejects them or hires them, then potentially the candidate could reappear in the list to be considered by other recruiters. Okay, so that's what we did. Oh, and then of course, if I decided for Namu that I wanted to phone screen Namu here, also again, Namu no longer satisfies the requirement to be in this list because she's now under consideration somewhere. She's in process. But she definitely appears on this list. And this is very handy, right? So your recruiters now have the ability to easily see the candidates that they're engaged with, and only if necessary do they go looking for the available candidates. I don't have enough here, let me consider some other ones. Reject Murray, perhaps phone for interview Mango, and so on, right? So there's a lot of ease of use that's introduced by doing this two-tab setup, one being in process and the other being available. So let's look quickly at how we configure that. If I go to my rec-specific candidate workflow, the first thing to note is that I have the main statuses mapped appropriately. If you get to this screen and you see that there's more than one main status assigned to any of these, it's probably not going to work, and you probably need to investigate how the main status and dynamic status mappings work, because this really isn't going to make sense for you and it's not going to work. So when I have somebody that comes in as available, or maybe I've passively added them, or maybe they've assigned to the rec, as soon as I move them into phone screen, they automatically get set to in process. That happening is paramount for this list view thing to work, right? Now, there's two list views for the candidate by requisition list view that are relevant, and so we'll go look at those. One is the in-process requisition candidate list views, and what we're looking at is candidate by rec. Here's one that is the in-process. Here's what you need to do. You need to go through and choose whatever fields you want, but set the list view filter of requisition specific status, and then choose all of your in-process statuses. Okay, so if I edited this, I would choose my fields, I would choose my filter. Yours may say rec specific status, mine just says status. I would click next, and then I would go through my list and I would look for everything that means that I'm working on hiring that person. These are all kind of rejected statuses. These are all kind of I haven't started the process statuses. So really it's these ones in the middle that are my in process statuses. Okay, so that's how you set the in process one up. That's pretty straightforward. The available candidate's a little bit more tricky, not overly tricky, but a little bit more tricky. We need to include the candidate main status as well as the rec specific status. So let's go in and have a look at that. I choose whatever fields are relevant for me. Shouldn't be very many, by the way. Make sure that you're being really mindful about what displays here. You don't want to overwhelm our users. Don't have things like email address, phone number, things that you don't need at the point of looking at a list. So I've chosen main status and again rec specific status. In my main status, I want anything that is not in process and probably not hired or disqualified. Disqualified here basically means that it's a knockout or a blacklist, right? So these candidates won't show up anywhere. You may not have that configured. You probably don't want hired, but you probably want, if you have any new or passive mobile, any of these things that are the starting status, they're not in the works, and excluding my in process. And then I'm coming over to my requisition specific status, and I'm saying, well, I know that my ones that are in process appear in tab A, so I don't want any of my in process to appear here. And so I'm saying for this specific requisition, they're also new, available, you know, whatever. They are not, I probably could include invited here, right? So these are candidates that have not necessarily been pushed through the workflow at all. And that's it. So you've got, then when you do that, the last step, of course, is to go to your roles, which we can come to the roles. Go to whatever user group that you want to configure this for. For me, I've got it for my administrator. Go to default list views. Come down to your candidate by requisition list views. So here's candidate by requisition, and then just choose whatever you want. Available candidates and in process. You may want to put all candidates. You might just use that for your own troubleshooting, but that's basically how you do that. I hope this video helped you.